you guys, this is going to be the video demonstration for step number 13 in our sweatshirt instruction sheets. So if you look at number 13, the big step says pin the hood to the shirt along the neck edge as follows. Shirt and hood both right sides out. So we have both of those. You're going to want to turn your hood right side out so we're looking at the good side. And then also same thing with your hooded sweatshirt. Body piece, you want to make sure that you're looking at your sweatshirt and you want the pocket to be in the front here because we know that this is the front of our sweatshirt. So we have the front of our sweatshirt and then we have our hood piece right sides out. We are going to be pinning right sides together as always. We want to make sure our raw edges are even. The back hood seam matching the center back. So what that means, if you take a look at your hood piece here, you'll see your lining on the inside, and this is that center back seam. So if you turn your hood to the back and you look at it, this seam line runs right in the center here. So that is your center back of your hood. You want to match that line to the center back of your sweatshirt. So we're going to be looking at the back of our sweatshirt to pin the hood on, and it's going to be kind of difficult to find the center back, but I will show you how as soon as we get there. So moving on in the list in our instructions, you're going to want to have the back hood seam matching the center back, which we just discussed, the lines on the hood matching the lines on the shirt, the double notches matching at the center front once we get to the center on the front side of the main body piece. And then the front hood edges should overlap the center front about 3/8 of an inch. So that's not a whole lot, but they should overlap just a little bit. So the biggest piece to the puzzle that we want to start with is going to be the one on the list, that little indent that says the back hood seam matching the center back. So make sure that you're on the back side of your sweatshirt, and you can double check that because there's no pocket on the back side. So we're on the back side of our sweatshirt, and then we want that back center seam of our hood that we talked about. So that line right there. Those are the two things that we're going to match up. Now to find the center back, you want to take a look at the back piece here, and you'll see we have our seam lines right here for the sleeve. So we're going to take those and pinch them together. So just match them up, and you're going to pull this section out, and right here where this part meets, that is your exact center back. So the center of the back of your sweatshirt. So you just want to hold that with your finger on one hand, and then we're going to take our hood piece and we are going to match this line here, this seam, to where my finger is, so the center back. And remember, you want right sides together. So we're going to turn it upside down, and you want to be looking at the lining side here. So this center seam, we are going to match to where my finger has pressed, because that's the center back. And that is the most important part to match up, and you're going to take a pin, and you're going to put that in here to hold it all together. So we're going to pin that in place, and I'm going to put a second pin just to make sure that we have that, and that it's not going anywhere. Okay, so you want to put your hood facing down, and then you want that center seam to match up with the center back. So it should be directly in between those two sleeve lines. That's your center back. Once you have that, you are going to take your hood and go around the sweatshirt on both sides, pinning. Okay, so we are just going to match up these raw edges. And it's important to note as you're working and as you're pinning that the sweatshirt neckline that you've been working with this whole time has probably gotten stretched out just from all the different things that we have done with it by adding the sleeves, adding the front, adding the back. So it's very possible that if it gets too stretched out, that it may not match up perfectly with your hood. Your hood may seem too small for it. If that happens and your hood seems too small, you can try to repin it by giving yourself a little bit less room along the neckline here, and you can do that by not scrunching it up. You don't want any puckers, but you can kind of move this seam up a little bit just to sandwich in more fabric as you're working. Also, once you get to these big seams, you want to pin them down flat. Now, if you get all the way around and your hood is significantly smaller, than your neckline. What that means is that you probably did not sew at 5/8 of an inch for all of these seam lines. So what you want to do, and I did that on this one, so you can see, you will want to go and measure the 5/8 and make sure that you start there, and then you can just do a second seam line all the way down here and match up with that original seam that you sewed. Okay, so if that happens and your neckline is way too big for the hood, we can always go in and just take more, make a bigger seam there so that your hood matches up. So I'm going to keep working around here, and remember, these get stretched like I said, so you want to kind of push some of that fabric in there and try to squeeze as much in as possible so that we have the best chance of your hood fitting perfectly the first time. We're matching up these edges, putting in pins, and remember, every big seam like this one, you want to pin down flat. Now you can tell on this first side that we're doing well on this sweatshirt, matching up these edges and giving ourselves, or squeezing in a little bit more fabric as we pin, because these notches here, you can see there are those two little triangles sticking out, they match up with this center piece. So that is a good thing. You want yours to match up too. If yours is significantly different, so if your notches are way over here and they're not going to match up, then we'll want to go in and take a look at your seams and make sure that they were sewn at 5/8. If not, remember, like I said, you can go in there, you can add an extra little seam and just join it up here. If you do have to do that, just make sure you backstitch to secure it into those original stitches that you sewed. So I have that first half pinned, my hood is attached. Now I'm just going to keep going on this side. So we're just going to sandwich some of that fabric in here, but without puckering it. So you don't want a pucker or a fold or anything like that. You just want to get as much fabric in there as possible when you're pinning. And we can always stretch the hood piece just a little bit because they are stretchy to give yourself some extra room, but we don't want to pull it to where it would look unnatural or where it would hang off when you put it on. So if you put it on and it looks like you pulled the hood, you don't want that. But a little bit of pull is okay, and we shouldn't notice it because the fabric will naturally settle. So we're lining up those raw edges. And this will take a while to pin. So you want to take your time because the pinning for this step is more important than the sewing. We've worked really hard the past couple of weeks on that main body piece of your sweatshirt and then also on the hood. And they're almost two separate projects at this point that now we are joining together. So it's very important that you take your time with this because once you have these two attached properly, your project is going to be close to finished. So once we get up here, you'll see that this sweatshirt looks really good because I have those two sections that are going to overlap 3/8 of an inch. Mine's a little bit more than 3/8, but that's okay. So we're going to overlap those and put a pin in there. Now when you go to sew this, you are not going to sew anything that's overlapped yet because we want to hold off on that because our next step is going to be to put our drawstring in that hood. So we need to be able to get the drawstring in and out of this section right here. So we're going to leave that and not sew, but we are going to sew the rest of the hood to the sweatshirt. So once you have your hood pinned on, you should have a nice even circle of pins all the way around. And remember, double check that you're pinning right sides together. So if you look at the outside, you should see the correct side of the hood and the correct side of the sweatshirt. On the inside, you should see the fuzzy side in here, and then you should see your lining around the top part. Pins all the way around, and remember, you're not going to sew right here. So that is how you pin the hood, and please check with me before you sew.